What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut. Welcome to episode 30 of Lawns Across America, first one for the new year of 2020. Hey, so welcome back, guys. Welcome to the first podcast of 2020. Thank you so much for joining me here. I know that a bunch of you have been reaching out to me over the last couple months asking, hey, where's the podcast? When's the podcast, coming back? Thank you so much, you guys, for being patient with me as I took the last couple months off here, just kind of working on some other projects, getting things prepared here for the 2020 season as far as a lot of the other content that I do goes. But I also just felt like there probably weren't as many things I could talk about over the wintertime, when the name of this podcast is Lawns Across America, and ends up that half of America's lawns are asleep. I just didn't feel like I had enough content to provide, even though, surprisingly enough, I was up over by Northwest Indiana here over the Christmas holidays, and actually, it was like 60 degrees there all through Christmas. I was there on the 23rd. We actually went over to my father-in-law's house and pruned the trees and shrubs over at his house. It was a beautiful day. His lawn was actually greener now in 60-degree late December, than it was in August when we were there previously. I just updated that on the channel. If you haven't been over to the Lawn Care Nut channel on YouTube in a while, go check that out. I have been posting weekly videos there, and there is a lot of stuff in there for everybody, no matter where you live. I always try to give information or educational stuff to you for your lawn in general, not just always, cool season, warm season. But I was able to go up and show what that lawn looked like and kind of look at that. I think that was kind of interesting, and I enjoyed editing that video in a certain way. Kind of gave it like an 80s feel, so that was fun. If you haven't been over there, check that out, and check out any of the other videos that you may have missed here over the winter if you haven't been there. With that, this will be the first podcast of the year. Obviously, I'm only going to do this one, though, here in January. Need just a little bit more ramp time with some other projects that I have going on before I can get back to doing this podcast weekly. So it's going to be this one here in January, and then I'll start up again weekly in February. As we start coming into the season, we can kind of have a lot more to talk about. However, in this podcast this week, I do have a lot of tips on board for cool season and warm season. It's pretty cool. I have a question, somebody that moved from Illinois down here to Florida having some challenges with their lawn, and so I'm going to be able to answer that question while giving a lot of really good tips to you folks up north and you folks down south because of the struggle that this person is having. We'll kind of break down why that is. Why are things so different, and how can they overcome now that they're down here in Florida? So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. But before I go into that, I need to address the elephant in the room here. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see visuals here. I'm in a little bit of a different place. If you guys remember when I started this podcast back last year in January, I actually was shooting out here in the garage. I was actually shooting over there next to my workbench, and I was standing, and it took me a little bit of time to get a feel for the best way to do that, and you guys gave me some feedback. I think at first I was maybe zoomed too far back, then I got too close, or whatever. I also didn't have as good of a mic back then. Things have improved, but once we got to the summer, I actually had to move. Hold on. Nice cup holder. But once we got to the summer, it got so hot out here, I could not do the podcast out here in the garage because I was literally just dripping wet sweat. And that's fun to mow in. It's fun to mow in the heat. I really enjoy working up a sweat in the heat mowing, but I don't enjoy podcasting and sweating. I don't know, just something about it. So I had moved it into my office, into my home office here, and that's where the podcast has been the last several episodes. Now I'm back out in the garage because it's cooler, and I thought I would kind of rearrange my garage studio. Now it's going to look messy, I think, on this camera, but this garage has been completely cleaned. I took 3 full days and revamped it, got rid of a lot of stuff, sold some stuff. The kayak that's been sitting on the wall, which was always just a domination article, it was never to be used. It was always just up there so I'd look like a cool fishing guy, and it gave me an excuse to wear fishing shirts and fishing neckwear and all the things that I like to wear that make me look eccentric unless I'm a cool fishing guy, and then I'm just cool. So long and the short of it is I got rid of that, sold that, got that out of here, just got rid of a lot of clutter and opened this wide open, and I'm redoing it. So you'll see on the YouTube channel as we go forward, it is a lot cleaner in here. It looks a lot better. But I'm also, putting some more stuff on the walls and kind of doing that, working on some lighting. It looks terrible in this shot here, but at night, the lighting I've got going on here is pretty cool, so I'm messing around with that. I don't think, though, that this view that I'm on here now, which I'll just go ahead and address it for those of you that are listening only, through the podcast channels and you're not viewing, is that I am sitting here on a brand new Toro 42-inch time cutter mower. And this is my new mower that I got for the 2020 season. I just picked this up a couple days ago, and really looking forward to showing this off for you guys. In fact, I've been kind of teasing it a little bit. I'll put out on, and yes, by the way, I'm doing the podcast sitting on the mower. I just wanted to say that. And it is extremely comfortable. It's more comfortable than I could have imagined. This is so comfortable, this zero turn. This is not sponsored. You'll see. I'm wearing flip-flops, actually. So that proves this is not sponsored. But, and they are visual. You can see my flip-flops. So what I was getting at, though, is I was going to change the name. This is so comfortable. I thought maybe I'll change the name of the podcast to As the Zero Turns. But then I thought about As the Zero Turns. Am I the zero? I don't know. It didn't. Wow, that joke didn't come off very well. But anyway, if it makes the edit, it does. But I am sitting here on this time cutter, and it's been fun. I had a few people, though. Like I said, I've teased this out a little bit on Instagram and things, had a few pictures. I did a couple Insta stories showing when I picked it up and that. And people calling me out saying, I thought you said you'd never ride. You said you'd always walk. And I don't know if I actually ever said I would never have a riding mower. Or I would always walk, but I definitely know I've always said I prefer to walk, and I do. When I mow, when I enjoy the mow, I prefer to walk, and that is still the case. 100%, I prefer to walk when I mow. However, I didn't get this mower to be used. This mower is literally just to sit in this garage to be a prop for the channel. That's all this is for. I'm not going away from walking. I don't want you guys to think that I'm going to make that move at all. I would never do that. This is literally because it was either, new lazy boy chair or this. And this is the ultimate. When people come over here and hang out and I'm perched up on this throne, it shows domination 100%. So that's all this is. The My Ride, it's no joke. It's got this giant spring on it. You can make it like it's almost like a workout machine at the same time. I'll show you guys. I'll show you guys all of this. The reason this came about is, and this is not sponsored, I paid for this. Toro actually reached out to me. Their agency did, which is why I talked to them, because their agency reached out. And a good guy named Andrew Gilman, and he said, hey, this was a while ago before GIE, and he said, hey, we'd like to see if would like to talk. We got this time cutter. We'd like to get some get out there and get in front of your audience. What can we do? And I'm like, bro, not going to do anything where it's sponsored, because I just don't want to do that. I want to have if I have a mower, I want to buy it. That way I can talk about it in my own way, and I'm invested in it literally. It's not sponsored. It's not paid. None of that. So I was like, but what you can do, though, is you can give me access to buy the very first one of the season. There's some upgrades here. I believe the My Ride is the first time the My Ride here is, and if you're watching this on YouTube, it's awesome. It's a rocking chair on a mower deck, and with some cool handles that make you feel like you're driving Santa's sleigh. Now, the idea came from, if you guys haven't seen it, I did a prank video. Now, I don't do prank videos very often. I've done a couple on this channel, and surprisingly, they don't get a lot of views, and I think they're pretty good. I'm saying that because I'm the guy doing the video. But I think my prank videos are pretty darn funny. They're clean. They're fun, But I did one called Famous Mowers Prank. Go to the channel, The Lawn Care Nut, and check that out if you haven't seen it, if you need a good laugh. We have our annual garage sale, yard sale here in the neighborhood, and I put my mowers out for sale for that, and had somebody film, my neighbor Edwin, he filmed for me, and we had people come by like they're going to buy the mowers, and they're expecting me to sell like a 21-inch Toro for like $200. That's what they're expecting, but I tell them it's like $10,000 or $11,000, and because it's a famous mower, because it's been used by Connor Ward, it's been touched by the Left Tool, it's been touched by Brandon Davis, it's all these people have done these different things. It has this many views on YouTube, And I also talked about the mowers, and I said, look, I can trace this back to the factory. It's a numbers matching original, only 300 of that year made. Kind of like people talk about at Mecum auctions. I don't know if you guys like to watch Mecum auto auctions. That's one of those things that's like ASMR in a way. I can watch Mecum auctions for like hours and hours and hours on end, and it's just really cool. And I felt like I look at my mowers in that same exact way. And by the way, why can't I? Right? I don't have any other big hobbies. I don't golf. I don't have a boat. I don't have a jet ski. I don't have a four-wheeler. I don't have a side-by-side. I don't have any of that stuff. What's mine? I bought a big mower that I didn't need. So lots to ramble on there about. But so part of the agreement with Toro was I'm buying this. So they already knew they were going to get airplay. But you guys know I'm brand loyal. Everything I buy is Toro. I have one Honda, which I love, but everything else I buy is Toro. I'm brand loyal. Just like guys that collect cars, they'll tend to collect a lot of Mopar vehicles or a lot of GM vehicles. It's just, Fords and Lincolns. It seems to be how that kind of thing rolls, right? People are brand loyal that way. And I guess I'm just that way with Toro. So when I'm going to get something that I don't necessarily need, but I want, I'm going to stick with the Toro. So that was kind of a no-brainer, hands-down choice for me anyway, and that's what I wanted because I'm just brand loyal that way already. And again, with me paying for it, with me buying it, it's my choice. I could have bought any mower. And for real, though, I didn't need this. I didn't. But I'm interested in it, and I wanted it. I mean, who doesn't want to buy a new big machine? Again, I don't have those four-wheelers and side-by-sides and all that. I bought a mower instead of a jet ski. But another thing, though, is I did see the opportunity for some fresh content. A lot of the content I see on Zero Turns is all done by the pros. Guys that are doing this day in, day out, 10, 15, 20 lawns a day, banging it out. They're using higher-end commercial equipment. But this Zero Turn here, this time cutter, this is specifically made for the residential market. This is not a unit that's made to go out and be used and abused every single day on the back of a trailer doing 10 to 15 to 20 yards a day. It's not marketed to that segment. But what this does do, and what Zero Turns in general do, is they allow the homeowner, the DIYer, to get a lot of really cool pro features, but you don't have to have every pro feature because you don't necessarily need to have things that are designed to be beat up, again, at 10 lawns a day. So you can get a lot of pro features, or what the guys at Toro call it is pro DNA. You can get that in the mower, and that's intriguing to me. The thing about it is most of the time you see these mowers reviewed, especially the ones aimed at homeowners, they're being reviewed by professionals who look at things from a different aspect. They look at things from a different context. And what you'll hear a lot of times when a professional reviews a time cutter or of that ilk, because all of these manufacturers have a residential line. They all do, of Zero Turns. And when you'll hear the pros talking about them, sometimes they even smirk about it. They'll be like, look at these cute little wheels. Or they'll say, oh, well, it's nice that it has this, but man, I wish it had the extra giant thick spindle. Well, it doesn't necessarily need that. I understand as a pro, you want to see that because that's a higher quality item that you're used to seeing. But as a homeowner, do I need it? Mowing my one lawn here, 10,000 square feet, a couple times a week. So I want to review from that aspect. The other thing I want to do is offer, hey, what is it like to go out and get a Zero Turn? Because there's a whole new learning curve here, and it can be intimidating. But some of you may want to make that move, to make that jump to the Zero Turn. Some of you may have to, but man, there's a learning curve there. You want to know, what do I need to prepare for? But sometimes pros who know it all already, they forget what it was like to have to realize, oh, you can't pick this up. This has to be moved with a trailer. To some of you, that's obvious, but when you buy this, it's not that mobile. If it gets in your garage and you don't own a trailer, if you have it delivered direct, it's staying at your garage. It's only going to go where you can drive it. You don't have a way to take it up the road. You see what I'm saying? So those are things. And then other things that come with that, you got to strap it down differently. So there's a whole new thing there. By the way, driving a trailer, if you've never backed a trailer before, learning curve, right? All these things can be intimidating. How about this? How do you get underneath it to sharpen the blades? It weighs over 500 pounds. How do you get under there, right? The other thing is, it doesn't come with mulching kits, things like that. So a lot of things here. And then, by the way, driving it, holy cow. I'll show you the first time I backed it off the trailer. It wasn't pretty. And I'm lucky I didn't get hurt. So I'm just saying, lots of learning curve here. I'm going to show you every single bit of it. I'm going to tell you every fear I had to go through and overcome. And I know that sounds like, oh, really, dude? Yeah, really. I've driven with trailers before, but it's been many, many, many years. So that was a little intimidating for me. I had to back a trailer into my driveway like 10 times. Well, I'm sure my neighbors were laughing at me. But anyway, everybody here knows how to back a trailer because they all own boats. But anyway, long and the short of it is, that's new content that I can offer here. And then the last reason I got it is because, yes, I am going to use it to mow. I'm just kidding about that. I do sometimes I'm encouraging you guys to mow more often. The more you mow, the healthier it will grow. And so this definitely cuts down my mowing time a lot. I don't know how much yet because I actually have not used it yet. It's been raining here, so I don't want to get it dirty in a muddy lawn. So I'm making it wait. But what will that do? Will that allow me to cut more? And if it will, then there's going to be a health benefit to the lawn because, again, the more you mow, the healthier it'll grow. So that's all of that. I don't think I'll keep the studio here sitting on this, even though it is super comfortable. This is really comfortable. This is more comfortable than a lawn chair, man. So, and again, cup holder. With that, I wanted to announce something else, and then I'll get into the tips today. Thanks a lot, you guys, for playing along with me as I ramble. I think my cadence is a little bit off from what it was. I think I sound a little too So I'll try to chill that out as we move forward. It's interesting when I haven't done a podcast in a while, you literally get rusty. And on top of that, I'm used to standing up. I think that's what I'm missing too. You can't see that if you're listening on iTunes or Google Play or one of those. So yeah, I feel like I can't use my hands as much. And I think that might be affecting the way I'm talking here. So anyway, I'm going to keep pushing on now. So this next segment, allow me to have a little bit of leeway. There's not a ton of lawn stuff to talk about right now. So I'm just going to introduce something that I thought would be a fun ramble. Sometimes I just ponder things while I'm mowing, because you all know I am still mowing weekly. So sometimes I just ponder things, and a lot of times it's music that makes me ponder things. And so actually, this idea that I'm coming up with here to talk about to you guys going forward, and some of the things I'm going to talk about through it are just things I pondered as I was mowing the lawn. So what I want to introduce here is a mowing playlist concept, and we'll call it Enjoy the Mow Playlists. And I'm not sure how you guys can share them with me, because I want you to make up Enjoy the Mow playlists. But if you go to Google Play, because I get all my music through Google Play. I do some through Amazon, but that's only when I play it through, I won't say her name because she'll come on here during my podcast, but most of my music I consume through Google Play. That's where I do all my curation and playlists and radio stations and all that kind of stuff. So if you go to Google Play and you search for Enjoy the Mow V1, Enjoy the Mow V1, you'll find a playlist that I created, Enjoy the Mow V1 Turning Points. Turning Points is just a descriptive kind of, album name that I wanted to give it. But it's Enjoy the Mow V1. And what I've done is I've put a bunch of songs in there that I just think go well together. There's no particular reason why. A lot of these have come up to me as I will find different, music and play similar music to it. And sometimes there's music that Google puts together with songs versus songs that you didn't think, you would have never thought to put together that do. So some of that's curated from this. It's my thumbs up as I'm mowing and things like that. I made this playlist, and it's not going to be something that all of you like, but there's a lot of good songs on here. I got One Headlight, The Wallflowers, what a good tune. I Alone by Live. Run Around by Blues Traveler. So you can see it kind of goes up and down a little bit. How about this? Never Let You Go, Third Eye Blind. I know, kind of overplayed in some ways. I got some Gin Blossoms on here, Collective Soul, Little Harvey Danger, Sublime, Everclear, Dishwalla. Of course, some Chili Peppers. I even have a Tracy Chapman song here. Some Black Crowes, Bare Naked Ladies, a little of this, a little of that. And I think these are really good songs to mow to. Now, it's about an hour and 20 minutes. I like the playlist to be about that hour and 20 minutes. I feel like that's about how long most of us spend between mowing, blowing, weed whacking, all of that, and then whatever kind of cleanup you do in the end, sweeping out the garage, maybe clean off your mower. You need about an hour and 20 minutes to enjoy the mow fully for a full service. And so that's what this playlist is. Now, one song that's on here that I wanted to call out is one of my favorites of all time. And this song goes back to 1993 or 4. I remember it from 1994, but I think it actually came out in 1993. It's Mr. Jones by the Counting Crows. Now, that whole entire album, August and Everything After, I think it was called, has just the whole album. It's one of those where you listen to it from the first song to the last, and they just move, and every song works together, and it all tells a story overall. That's why it was such a groundbreaking album. But that song, Mr. Jones, just reminds me, at that time in my life, I was actually in Southern California. I was stationed at March Air Force Base, and that was just kind of interesting because that song represents a turning point in my life. Being a kid from St. Pete, Florida, ending up in Southern California. Essentially, I was in Riverside, Moreno Valley, the Inland Empire. It's a bedroom community of Los Angeles. So it's Southern California in everything that Southern California is and was even back in the 90s. And I can remember I was in public affairs. I worked in the public affairs office. And so we had on multiple TVs all day of all the news stations just because we were public affairs. We needed to monitor if anything happened or was going on or whatever. Sometimes the news would hear about about things that we needed to know as base public affairs, as public relations. Sometimes the news would hear about things before we did, so we always had the news on. And one of the things, we'd had local news, and we'd also have, like the national or the CNNs or C-SPANs, I think. I don't know if even Fox News and those and MSNBC, I don't know if those were around back then, but no, CNN was. But anyway, that would be on all day. And one of the things I remember that was so shocking to me, like a culture shock to me, was that there would be, I don't know how often they were, but it seems like every 2 or 3 weeks, there'd be like this high-speed chase where the helicopters on KTLA were like chasing a car on the freeway as cops chased, like real live Chips. If you guys ever watched Chips when you were a kid, I think I watched it in the 80s, but it might have been a 70s show, Ponch and John. It was like real live Chips, and I'd be watching these car chases like, wow, I mean, this stuff never happened in St. Pete, Florida, man. None of that. So I don't know, it was like a culture shock to me. And then I remember also during that time was the infamous O.J. Simpson slow speed Bronco chase. That was also broadcast live, and I watched it as it was broadcast live and couldn't believe it's O.J. Simpson? What? Accused of murder. And I mean, O.J. Simpson, you understand, was Heisman Trophy winner, great sideline reporter. That was juice, man. He was running through airports representing Hertz Rent-A-Car. That he was one of our heroes, and I'm watching this slow speed Bronco chase, and man, that song conjured those things up. By the way, now OJ's on Twitter. That just tells you how far things go. It's just and how things change. That's a lot of years ago. Speaking of that, also having that, I was living in Southern California and those TV shows were on during that time. I watched the entire O.J. Simpson trial live. It was broadcast live, and I got to watch it. And I remember learning so much from his dream team of attorneys. Johnny Cochran was the one that most people know. He was just an incredible orator, and he's the one that came up with the "if it doesn't fit, you must acquit," which was just probably one of the best pitches ever in anything. But there was another guy. If you guys remember Barry Scheck, Barry Scheck was a guy that I learned a lot about DNA evidence from. Back then, in that time frame, DNA evidence wasn't near what it is today, and his job was to poke holes in the prosecution's case when it came to the DNA evidence and the way that he questioned the forensic scientists and things. And it was incredible to listen to the way that he used words to get his point across, but not allow ins or out. It was brilliant. And I learned a lot from that. Another thing was there was a man named Kardashian who was the lead defense attorney on that dream team. You guys know the name Kardashian. I don't know much about all that Kardashian stuff as it is today because I don't follow it, and Kanye West's wife and all that. But I do remember Robert Kardashian, the strikingly sharp and just sharp-witted attorney that just had control, and you knew that he was a winner. Just interesting to see. And now what the Kardashians are today. So kind of interesting that song, as I listened to that song while mowing, just kind of brought up all of those things that I pondered, and during those times when I watched that trial and the things I learned from watching, what doesn't matter what you feel about the way it turned out or anything, it was just watching the characters and learning and seeing what you can learn from them and how that could affect you. And I don't know, it must have had a profound effect on my life because I'm mentioning it now. And I think that that's a really cool way that music can speak to you. And while I would rather you listen to this podcast while you're mowing, and I know that a lot of you guys do, I think it'd be cool to have some playlists. So that was my little trip down, amnesia lane there, back to when I lived in Southern California and some of the things that were turning points in my life. And I think that some of that music, I think that a lot of you that listen to that playlist, you're gonna come up with some things too. And I think it's cool to kind of ponder on that. So check out that playlist. And then I'm not sure how we can share this in the future, but what I want to do is each week when we do a podcast, I'll have a playlist. By the way, if you're not on YouTube, I'll link it in the YouTube video description. If you're not on YouTube though, but you're on a regular email list, I'll send out an email later this week, kind of updating you guys again, and I'll put this link to this playlist in that email too. So if you're on the regular email list, I'm not going to start the weekly emails up weekly yet, but I'll send one out next week, talking a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We'll talk some shop. We'll kind of talk about some things, and some things that'll be relevant to this podcast. I'll kind of do a follow-up email on that, and I'll also put in this playlist. But I was thinking about how could you guys share these with me? I think Twitter's a good place to do it. By the way, if you're not on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. Just search the Lawn Care Nut on there. I'm actually Alan Paul, at Alan Paul, ALLYNPAUL on Twitter. I have a lot of fun on Twitter. There's a handful of guys and girls on there that we go back and forth, and it's fun because it's only 140 characters. So you have to, when people ask questions or whatever, it's quick, boom, 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 and it's easy to, I don't know, I like the cadence of Twitter. I like to communicate there. I can also be funny and can send GIFs and stuff, which I enjoy doing. However, if you want to submit something for an Enjoy the Mo podcast, for an Enjoy the Mo playlist, make your playlist at least an hour and 20 minutes long, and then maybe give it a description, tell me a little bit about it, tweet it to me somehow. Now, I think Spotify would probably work. It needs to be something that can be accessible. I don't even know if these that I made here are accessible to people that don't have Google Play Music. I'm not sure about that, but somebody in the audience will make one that'll be public, and we'll share it. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, but tweet me your playlist. Tweet that to me on Twitter, and I'll see about making that a weekly thing. I think that'd be a really cool feature every week that one of you gets to supply the Enjoy the Mo playlist for that week. And again, we'll put it in our emails, and it'll just be a fun thing. And I really look forward to seeing and discovering different music, because one of the things that I really do love about the way that people curate music now, I grew up on records and then tapes. I mean, most of my life was cassette tapes and then CDs. And of course, now the way we curate music is just all online in the cloud. But I actually like that, because what I like to do is I'll find a song I like, and then I'll put on radio, which typically will give you similar songs, and sometimes you'll get one that's way off, and then I'll take and make that one radio, and I'll go there, and I'll come off into a whole new genre of music. It's kind of how I discovered Gold Room and M83, and I don't even know if those two are related, but that's two I can think of. That's the other thing, though, when you do discover music through that radio feature, you don't always learn the names of the artists. You just learn the songs, and you put them in playlists, and you never actually see the name of the artist, which is why I can't remember Two-Door Cinema Club or whoever they are, or that genre of music. But long and the short of it is, I look forward to discovering new music from you guys too. I know I'm rambling a little bit, so let's go ahead now and get into the tip. By the way, don't forget, the tips line is still open. In fact, you guys can start calling in there and asking questions, because that'll start now ramping us up for what's coming into the spring. So that's 833-526-8477, 833-LCN-TIPS, 833-526-8477. Call in on that line. Leave your questions there. I have somebody that'll curate those for me, and we'll get those on and get those starting to get answered. That'll start setting the cadence for as we go in the future. One last thing, I do have a sticker board behind me. You're not going to be able to see it here. I'll post it in some different forums. I'll put it on somewhere else. Maybe I'll put it here on YouTube. But long and the short of it is, a bunch of you had stickers. You have stickers that are on my laptop here, but a bunch of you had them on. I had I don't know what it's called, some sort of sound blocker thing in here back in the day. A lot of the stickers are on that. I don't think that's going to be in the podcast as much anymore. And I don't want you guys to get left out that your stickers are on there or that didn't make it on the laptop. So I'm not sure I'm going to do this, but I'm going to start doing sticker swaps again. So some of you I owe stickers to. If you've sent them to me in the last couple weeks, I definitely have you on a list. I'm getting fresh made. But if you sent me stickers 6 months ago and I didn't send you any back, I'm really sorry. That's my fault for not being organized, but it's not on purpose. So if you want to do a sticker swap, just send me fresh stickers. I'll get them on this fresh board here, which is going to go up on the wall there. You can send those to 8955 U.S. Highway 301 North, number 206, Parrish, Florida 34219. 8955 U.S. Highway 301 North, number 206, Parrish, Florida 34219. So if you want to do a sticker swap there, please do send those out, and I will send you some back. Like I said, I had some different designs being remade here, and I'm going to get some of those sent out for you guys that want to do sticker swaps. If you're YouTubers or if you have a lawn business or whatever kind of thing, we can do a sticker swap there. I'm really happy to do that. Really like giving you guys, a little free press every once in a while. Who knows, somebody will see your sticker on there somewhere or whatever and discover you. I really like being able to do that as a way to kind of give back to the community in a small way. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into our one and only question this week. I kind of teased it out at the very beginning. It's somebody that moved from Illinois down to Florida. They're asking a few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and read this through. So this one is coming from Michelle and Bob. Michelle and Bob working on the lawn together there. And this is Michelle that's writing in here. And they're from Claremont, Florida. So it's right near Orlando. So right around that frost line. Probably their lawn is not currently dormant right now. That's in the middle of Florida. They're right on that borderline, and we've had a really warm winter so far. And so because of that, I'm going to assume that currently, right now, as we're filming this podcast on January 4th here, their lawn is not dormant. Here we go. Hello, Alan. We have recently moved to Florida from Illinois and have found our knowledge is zero when it comes to southern lawns. I bought your online book and have been following your blogs, but I'm still at a loss with our lawn. We have St. Augustine Grass in Claremont. It's a small 3,800 square foot lot. The home was built in 2018, and as we watched them install the sod, they put it right over the sand and construction trash. For the first year, we used a service for cuts and a separate service for Kim. I thought that would be good to establish the lawn, and that was our first mistake. We did take over this year. We bought a lawnmower, and based on your info and those on the Facebook page, we went with Sunnyland products. We have gone through a full year of treating and feeding and find ourselves at a loss. We are overrun with crabgrass and wild Bermuda. We started to use Weed Be Gone for St. Augustine on the weeds, which seems to be killing off some of the weeds, but not all of them, and we do cut at 4 inches and mulch the clippings. I wanted to contact you directly to see if you can offer any advice. We would truly appreciate any info you can offer. Michelle and Bob from Claremont, Florida. So Michelle, welcome down from Illinois over by there. You guys know I had to do that. I got somebody calling in there from Illinois. They're probably from Southern Illinois. They don't even have that accent. But anyway, I want to welcome you guys to Claremont over by there. So let's talk through this, y'all, because I feel like you're discouraged, and I don't want you to be, but I do want you to understand there are some challenges we have here that we can't overcome and that we do have to live with or take different measures with or different strategies against. And so what I'm going to do, because you pointed something out, is that you said, and again, this is Michelle that wrote in, so I'll just talk directly to Michelle, but it's Michelle and Bob here working on this together. Is Michelle, you said that your knowledge is zero. And that I don't think, though, that your knowledge is zero. We're going to talk through that. And I think that what we need to realize is that your strategy or your approach was just off. Let me say it that way. So let me kind of go through a little bit of thinking here. And I can tell you that you're not the only one that this happens to all the time, because most people that live here, especially in this part of Florida, are not from here. They're all from up north. And I hear it all the time. They're like, wow, I didn't realize how difficult it was to deal with a lawn in Florida, or I didn't understand how hard this was, or how much weed pressure there would be, or how much they don't know. And the reason that is because of the fact that winter really provides a reset for northern lawns. Winter kind of, how do I say, it can cover a multitude of problems. It can even sometimes suppress problems, kill problems, prevent problems. A really good winter, for example, will reduce the next year's grub populations, because grubs are able to overwinter. They do go deeper into the soil, but if you get an unseasonably hard, deep, frozen year, it will kill and reduce the grub populations. That's one example. The same thing can happen with weeds and weed seeds and things like that. Just as we've said, if you seed too late up north, what you do is you face the challenge that seeding too late, your grass plants won't be hardened off. They won't be mature enough to withstand the winter. Well, the same thing happens with weeds. Weeds that germinate late into the year can also be killed off by the winter. So that's one of the things that doesn't happen down here in the south, especially this far south, where it's 12 months a year. It's the exact opposite. Instead of a 6-month-a-year season like you have up north in Illinois, down here you have a 12-month season. It's doubly as long. That means weeds can grow longer, diseases can linger longer. There are more bugs that can live here because it's warmer, that there's no winter to kill them off. All of these things come into play. However, I don't want you to think that you have zero knowledge, because you don't, Michelle. What you have is experience. You know how to apply fertilizer. You know how to spray weed control. That's the same thing. Blanket spraying weed control on a northern lawn is the same as blanket spraying weed control on a southern lawn. It's just the chemical is different. The timing might be different. But other than that, the technique is the same. And also, if you understand what a half a pound of nitrogen means versus 3/4 pounds of nitrogen, that's the same that translates for cool and warm season too. If you understand how to flex your nutrient levels, that's the same. Soils can be different for sure though, and that's another consideration, but I don't want you to think that your knowledge is zero. It's not. Your experience will always play. It's kind of interesting. I was talking to my friend Chris the other day, and we were talking about how I was saying, I never listened to my dad when I was a kid. And there's a lot of things I don't know. You guys know when it comes to using tools. I don't know how to use tools. I'm terrible at it. By the way, when you see the first time I tried to drive the zero turn, you will see that I have no instincts for driving large equipment. I don't. My dad, he was a fireman. He drove all kinds of large equipment. I never took advantage of his knowledge. But when Chris and I were talking, it wasn't necessarily the specific knowledge. My dad had a lot of specific driving knowledge with fire trucks and large equipment, and he knew how to tow trailers and things because of his fire experience. He knew how to use all kinds of things that firemen know, right? I don't even know. I didn't pay attention, so I don't really know everything he knew. But he translated that muscle memory or that understanding of the way things work and the way things will operate. He translated that into other things to the point where he can drive anything. He can drive anything because he drove things that not many people knew how to drive, and he learned a muscle memory. That's the best way I can say it. And now he can drive anything. I hope that makes sense to you. And that's the same with you. You have an understanding of tending a lawn, and because you do, you can translate that muscle memory. Now you just need to get a little knowledge of what you're up against. So that's how I'm trying to get you to look at it. You have a lot of good learning curve already out of the way. Now it's the approach to it. Use what you've learned, though. Use your muscle memory to make you successful as you move forward. I need you to look at it in that way. I hope that's coming across. And if you look at it in that way, you'll have confidence, because one of the things that you definitely need to have with our grass types down here is confidence, because, for example, they're easily injured. We're going to talk about the alpha male of grass, the alpha grass that we have here, but I can tell you that our alpha grasses are also big babies, and they get injured very easily, but they also come back fast. So don't want to get too wrapped around the axle on that, but I just wanted to let you know that definitely, Michelle, you're not out there with zero knowledge. So now let's get into what I would say actually you should do right now. So this particular segment of tips is going to be aimed at those of you that are in Florida right now. This could even be up through February, and you have St. Augustine grass. So somewhere into February and March, your lawn is growing slow. So like right now in Jacksonville, I don't think anybody's lawn is growing. I think most of you guys in Jacksonville, Tallahassee, maybe over into Panama City that have St. Augustine grass, my assumption is that your lawn is dormant. This is not for you right now. This is for any of you that are still actively growing. If you're still mowing at least every 10 days, so whenever you come upon this podcast, if you have St. Augustine grass and you're at least mowing every 10 days and your lawn is still sufficiently growing, this is what you do. So Michelle, you for sure over there in Claremont, for sure right now, go out. You said you chose the Sunnyland products. Get the Sunnyland Weed and Feed for St. Augustine grass. It's a purple and yellow label, and it's a 2006 analysis. Hold on, I have a picture of the label I'm going to pull up here just to make sure I'm telling you this right. But the reason I want you to get it is because it contains atrazine. Now, so many of you guys will know that I have said ever since probably my 5th or 6th or 7th video on this channel that I do not like weed and feed products. I'm not for weed and feed products, and I'm still not for weed and feed products, except in this case. And there are a couple other exceptions that I mentioned on the podcast before that we'll talk about for you cool season turf guys and girls. I'll talk about weed and feeds for you when we get to like May 5th and you haven't done anything yet. We'll talk about weed and feeds. But in a similar vein, similar vein here in Florida right now, if you're just starting out and you have a lawn that has a lot of problems, as Michelle is saying here, what I want you to do is hit the proverbial reset button, and the way to do that is with a weed and feed that contains atrazine. By the way, this will work for zoysia lawns too. I didn't want to leave you guys out. This is also for zoysia lawns. It's not for Bermuda though, and it's not for Bahia grass. Centipede, you'd be okay as well. So it's for centipede, zoysia, and St. Augustine. I think of it as a St. Augustine weed and feed because that's typically where it's marketed. But centipede, St. Augustine grass, and zoysia that's actively growing right now, get that Sunnyland with atrazine and throw that down at the labeled rate. I have a video on the channel, the Lawn Care Nut YouTube channel, where I show you how to do it. I show you how to measure it out, all that kind of stuff. We go through how much nutrient you're going to get from it. It turned my lawn, my Palmetto St. Augustine, a beautiful emeraldy green. I mean, real pretty color green. And same with the Floritam, zoysia looking good too. Did a nice job. I was really happy with it. It's loaded with micronutrients, but I like it for the atrazine. So atrazine is a pre-emergent and a post-emergent, and that's why it's okay for me as a weed and feed. It's like a cleanup. It's a cleanup. It's a reset button. Let's just go out and kill everything that we can, but it's a selective herbicide. Atrazine it's a selective herbicide in zoysia, centipede, and St. Augustine, so it won't harm your centipede grass or your St. Augustine or your zoysia, but it will kill a good number of weeds. Pre and post-emergent. Post-emergent, it's going to go after the pusley, the pigweed that's big this time of day or time of year, spurge, but it also has preventative application or pre-emergent efficacy on crabgrass and paspalums. Paspalums are bahia grass. So if you have bahia grass that is invading your zoysia, your St. Augustine, or your centipede, you can use atrazine to pre-emergent. It'll also post-emergently kill it. So that happens a lot around here where I don't have problems with bahia in my lawn, but some people do. So if you need to knock bahia out of your St. Aug, again, atrazine is good. This weed and feed would be good for that, as well as some preventative crabgrass. Now, I want to talk about, so that's your first thing you do. Put that down. It's going to do two things. It's going to stimulate the St. Aug to continue growing. Even though it's cooler right now, it's going to be growing slow. It's going to continue to grow healthy, but it's also going to give you the atrazine, which will have that post-emergent effect on that Florida pusley, that Florida snow that's coming out right now. I didn't get a lot of good effect on the dayflower with it when I used it, but it did eliminate a good portion of weeds. The idea is that it's a reset button to kill a number of the weeds you have. In other words, it's a good way to blanket treat and try to get rid of a lot of stuff. It will not kill everything. Now, one thing I wanted to address here real quick, and Michelle does this, she says that she's got crabgrass. Now, you very well may have crabgrass. You very well may have signal grass. But I also think that folks that come from up north, I've heard this a lot over the years. You guys realize I've been working with homeowners here. Not only, I say dealing with, when I was at True Green, I was dealing with homeowners. Now I'm working with homeowners. Very important distinction. But during that time, I've learned how folks think and how they talk. And a lot of times folks up north, crabgrass is a generic term for anything that you don't want in your lawn that's not a broadleaf weed. So they will just see any kind of problem grass or something they can't identify, like they can identify clover and dandelion probably, and maybe you can identify creeping Charlie or ground ivy, and that's about all you can identify, and violet maybe. So anything else you see that you don't know what it is, you call it crabgrass. It's a generic term. So a lot of folks that come from up north and come down here, when I talk to them and we're working together, they will say, my lawn is riddled with crabgrass. Well, it's not necessarily crabgrass. It's just some sort of something that they don't want there that looks like a grass, but they don't know what it is. And in a lot of cases, it might be tropical signal grass. So this is the next tip here, Michelle and others and everybody else, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more this year. It's one of the things I really want every one of you to take advantage of, and that is your local county extension service. So a local county extension is literally an extension of your local university, and what they do is they have offices located in Florida here. It's in every county, I believe. There might be multiple offices in each county, and Michelle, I found yours. Let me find the link here, and I'll tell you where yours is. But with that, you can go there, and the county extension will have open office hours where you can take samples of your weeds, take roots and all, and they'll help you identify them. And as well as they will help you understand what you might do to either kill those weeds or prevent them or whatever else. They'll give you that advice. That's what they're there for. A lot of them also will take email. You can email in. I'm looking here at our county extensions, our extension offices here in Florida are all operated through the University of Florida. And let's see, looks like there is one in Tavares, Florida, at 1951 Woodlea Road in Tavares, Florida. That would be probably one for you, Michelle, but you can just Google search, no matter where you guys live, Google search County Extension Office near me, and you'll be able to pull that up. Some of them, again, they'll allow you to email in pictures. A lot of them have blogs also. Like, they know what weeds are in your lawns right now. The University of Florida will put out blog posts. Hey, this is what's going on right now in Florida lawns. This is what you look for. So get in touch with your local county extension service. And I want you to do that, Michelle, to identify what is that crabgrass or what it is that you're calling crabgrass, because the way you go after it will definitely be different if it's signal grass versus crabgrass. So go and check that out. Go get all those weeds properly identified. And then whatever you do from there, whatever the atrazine doesn't wipe out, that's when you can make a different strategy. And I can't give you that because I don't know what weeds we're talking about specifically, but definitely maybe a different pre-emergent that you'll need to use if it's something like that. Maybe it's nutsedge, for example, that you're dealing with. I have a lot of nutsedge right now, or kalinga. talk about pre-emergent and post-emergent strategies there, but you won't know until you get those weeds identified. So that's another step that I would ask you to take. But trust me, I've got much better news for you. But first, I have to give you some bad news. If you do have common Bermuda that's invading, I do too. I don't know the percentage of Florida lawns that have common Bermuda that invades, but it's a high percentage. And it's going to get in your lawn if it's anywhere within several miles of your neighborhood. Now, you mentioned that you did have someone cutting your lawn, and for sure, sprigs of wild Bermuda will stick on trailers, they will stick on mowers, they'll get blown around. It's going to happen. That is not the fault of your lawn service. They can't help it. There's nothing that people, sanitize your mower decks. No, they're not going to sanitize their mower decks. They need to get work done, okay? So it's going to spread that way, but likely, even if you didn't have a lawn service, if you had your own mower and had been mowing from the beginning, likely if your neighbors have lawn services, or again, stuff blowing down the road, the trash pickup, people leaving their clippings at the road, it gets stumped over, the wind blows them down, you're going to get wild Bermuda. So the idea here is to realize that if you want to keep a perfect single stand of, Floratam St. Augustine, which is probably what you have over there in Claremont, if you want to keep a single stand of St. Augustine grass, you're going to have to just realize that every 5 to 8 to 10 years, you'll have to resod sections of your lawn, or in some case, people will resod their entire lawn every few years. So that is just the nature of the beast here in Florida. There is nothing you can do to get around it. There's no chemical way around it. There's no way to mow differently. The St. Augustine will not choke out the Bermuda. They will find a happy medium. Eventually, I have found that Bermuda will start to win the war over St. Augustine over time. I will show that to you and illustrate that to you later on in this podcast so you kind of understand that. But just think about it in those terms, Michelle. There's nothing you can do about it. Now, there is one solution that I know of that will work against wild Bermuda invading St. Augustine grass, and that is to go to the Scottsboro Vista. The Pro Vista St. Augustine grass is glyphosate tolerant. Glyphosate, you guys know it as the brand name Roundup, even though Roundup is just a brand. Roundup has all kinds of stuff that they make for lawns that don't include glyphosate. Glyphosate is what's called a non-selective herbicide, which means it will kill everything it touches. One of the things, though, that it won't kill is Scottsboro Vista St. Augustine grass, because it is a genetically modified St. Augustine grass that has been genetically bred to be tolerant of glyphosate. It's like Roundup Ready corn. That's been around for years. And by the way, glyphosate is a great tool for our farmers. It reduces costs. It does a lot of good things for farmers. And if you are somebody that is in Florida and you are farming turf and you are farming your one single, crop stand of St. Augustine grass at your house in suburbia there in Florida, and you don't want any kind of invasion from wild Bermuda, or if it does invade, you want one tool to get rid of it, you should get Scottsboro Vista St. Augustine grass. That's not sponsored, even though I work with those guys. I work with Bethel Farms, who is also one of the patent holders of that grass type. They are my friends. They are a local sod farm here, and I love to support them in that way. But it works. The stuff just works. I have a direct line to Lucas, who is the scientist that works over at the Apopka Center for Scotts and does all the testing. And I'm telling you, these are good people that really care about this grass type and making it better and better and better. And yes, there is Kentucky bluegrass available now. Just Google it. Just when you do call in, if you want the Scott's Kentucky bluegrass, the Scottsboro Vista Kentucky bluegrass, which is also glyphosate tolerant, just make sure that you bug them and tell them that you're a lawn care nut fan and you expect to get first dibs. Please do that. I love it when you guys rib the Scots guys. So they love it too. So those are options there. I'm sorry I don't have any better news on that Bermuda for you, Michelle, but I will tell you the Scottsboro Vista is coming down in price, and I'm hoping to be able to make some really cool announcements about that coming up here, but it's starting to come down, and I also believe it's going to start being more readily available, for just anyone to go get. So that's a little bit of insider information. They've kind of kept it, distribution. They've kind of kept it close to the vest, but just like with anything, as it grows and as it moves and as it gains market share, that opens up distribution channels. So I'm just telling you guys here in Florida and even up into Texas and everywhere else, Georgia, it's going to be more readily available a lot quicker, as time goes on. All right, I feel like this podcast is getting really long, but I also feel like some of you guys like that because we're going to get into the meat of it now. And what I want to do from here is I'm going to talk to you, Michelle, but I'm also going to talk to the rest of you guys, because let's talk about our grass types, because this is the other piece is, Michelle, I want you to wipe out all those weeds, And then what amount of St. Augustine grass is left? Is it 10%, 30%? Are there sprigs that you can see runners moving, which we're going to talk about? Those are called stolons. What is there? What is left? Because the one difference that you're going to find with St. Augustine grass or warm season turf in general, as opposed to cool season grass, is that warm season grass has the ability to spread and thicken up and fill in very large bare spots very, very quickly, much quicker than a cool season lawn does. And so to understand why that is, because this is the encouraging part for you. And so to understand why that is, let's talk about the growth habits of our lawns when it comes to the cool season turf, which you had in Illinois, which was probably Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, or turf-type tall fescue, versus the southern warm season grasses, which in your case is St. Augustine grass. We also have Bermuda grass, we have zoysia, we have centipede, and we have Bahia grass. These are the warm season grass types, and they grow a lot differently, and they do things a lot differently because they have to withstand a whole different enemy, and they also have to withstand a whole different climate, and they also have to react differently to that climate. So let's first talk about what are called bunch type grasses. I'm going to talk to you guys up there in Illinois, and I got some notes here that I'm going to read through because I want to make sure that I get to this to you, in a clear and concise manner. So bunch type grasses. Bunch type grasses are perennial ryegrass and tall fescue, turf type tall fescue. These don't really have any ability to spread out wide. They don't have any ability to send out runners or send out, runners is what we call them. They can't send any escape pods out. You know what I'm saying? What they can do though is they can send out small tillers around a mother plant. So they send out small daughter plants via tillers around a mother plant, and those daughter plants cluster tight around the mother plant. And so that's why it's called a bunch type grass, because it can kind of get fatter in a bunch. And that's about all it can do. That's your turf-type tall fescue, and that's your perennial rye. And so when you feed those, when you hit those with nitrogen, you're fattening them up. They are tillering, and they are making more daughters around that mother plant, but there's only so fat that plant is going to get. However, there's an advantage there, though, because they're not sending out runners, and I'm going to explain what that is. They can also take more time to put down more roots. So typically what you're going to find, bunch type grasses are going to have a little bit stronger, deeper root system than our other types of grasses. So up north, you would have had a bunch type grass, but that also means they can't fill in bare spots as easily. You have to overseed. You'll have to throw down some seed if you have larger bare spots, because those grass types, they're not able to thicken up and spread too much on their own. Now, the next type of grass we have is called a rhizomatous, rhizomatous grasses. So some grasses, they'll spread via rhizomes. These are underground runners. They're just below the soil surface, and they kind of creep out a few inches from the mother plant, and then they pop up a fresh plant. It's also a daughter plant, but it's a couple inches away, and it kind of feeds back through that rhizome. It kind of gets energy from the mother plant so it can establish its own root system and also start sending up blades of grass from that daughter. But because it's a few inches away, it's able to continue creeping outward. So what happens is now, as those daughters are sent out a little further, then more rhizomes can continue to be sent out further, and more ground can continue to be taken. And all those daughter plants also will grow thicker and fatter around. So a grass type that has a rhizomatous, I'm not ever going to be able to say it right, type growth habit is able to literally take ground. Kentucky bluegrass does have rhizomes. Now, they're not super aggressive, and that is mainly because it's a shorter growing season. They can't be as aggressive. They can't take as much energy pushing out too wide, because as they widen out, they realize that, hey, the winter is coming, and we need to go ahead and push some roots, and we do need to push some grass blades and get more sunlight out of us, because that season is short. So yes, Kentucky bluegrass will fill in thin spots faster when compared to non-rhizomatous grass types such as tall fescue and perennial rye. However, one of the things that you'll know if you've worked with Kentucky bluegrass for a while is it does have a little bit weaker, shallower root system because it spends more energy on rhizomes and it's not able to put as much into roots. However, it still does pretty well. And of course, there's ways you can treat your lawn to help it to get better roots. So you can see there's an advantage and a disadvantage there. Now, those are cool season grasses. That's all you have. By the way, there is one that runs by stolons, which we'll talk about later. It's called creeping bent grass, and that's actually considered a weed to many of you. And you've noticed it'll overtake your lawn really hard because it runs really fast. We'll talk about stolons in a minute. But let's look at warm season grasses just for a comparison in growth habit. And as we're going to talk about the warm season grasses, let's first talk about the stoloniferous grass types. So we talked about with cool season, we talked about bunch types and we talked about rhizonomous types. Now let's talk about stoloniferous types of grass. So those are St. Augustine, centipede, and Bahia grass. They actually spread through stolons. So stolons, think of them as very similar to rhizomes, but instead of creeping underground, they creep above ground. Because of that, those stolons are a little crunchier, they're a little beefier, they're a little harder, because they have to be above ground. They're going to get beat on by the sun. They are going to get beat on by foot traffic. So they're going to march, and they're going to be thicker and more stout, and they're going to creep across the top of the ground. And every few inches, a stolon has what's called a node, and a node will push down roots and push up grass blades and keep on going and keep on marching and keep on creeping and keep on adding nodes. And in fact, if you've ever looked, if you have St. Augustine grass or centipede, Bahia not so much, but if you have either one of those two, you will look after you edge your lawn during the rainy season, you'll have fresh stolons pushing out over into the sidewalk that'll grow 2 to 3 inches in a week. That is that grass moving. That is how St. Augustine and centipede move. Now, St. Augustine moves faster than centipede. Centipede moves faster than Bahia. So for sure, when it comes to the stoloniferous grass types, St. Augustine is the most aggressive and will move the fastest. And that's why it pertains to Michelle from our earlier question, because you can get that growth of 2 to 3 inches a week from the existing mother plants and from the existing nodes that are from the existing stolons that are already moving out and pushing nodes. I've showed you guys in videos before that St. Augustine grass, I've seen it creep over bushes. I've had pulled stolons out from bushes on the side of my lawn that I ignored for literally 6 months. And these stolons were 10 feet long, crawling over top of the bushes. Now, as you do frequent mowing, you're encouraging those to grow tighter and knit in tighter and thicker, but they will continue to creep and take ground, the stoloniferous grass types. And that's what Michelle has. So if you live in the South and you have one of those stoloniferous grass types and it isn't dormant right now, that's why you continue feeding, slow feeding a half pound to 3/4 pound of nitrogen every 4 to 5 weeks. You want to continue encouraging that grass, even though our days are shorter, we don't have as much sunlight, and we have cooler temperatures, it will still continue to move those stolons and push those stolons and continue to thicken up year round. As you ramp into the rainy season, when it gets warmer, that's when St. Augustine, the stoloniferous grass types, will really start to gain ground. Now, one other thing I'll give you here as a quick tip is that centipede and palmetto St. Augustine will play very nicely together. So those are two that if you need to work those in together, any of you listening, you can get those. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more at the end of the podcast here about grass seed and grass plugs and how those play into these grass types and these different ways of growth, of these growth habits. But I want to mention just 2 more grass types here because these are what I call the alpha grass types, and these are warm season grass types. They're rhizomatous and stoloniferous. Those are zoysia and Bermuda. These are the 2 most aggressive warm season grasses because they take their mother plants and they push off stolons and they push off rhizomes. And what that effectively does is it allows them to literally choke out all competitors. I've got some zoysia on the side of my lawn over here. It's Empire zoysia. And I can tell you right now, I have torpedo grass invading everywhere else in my lawn. The zoysia has kept the torpedo grass choked out. Now, there is some there. I'm not saying it's killed it out completely, but it is not gaining any ground. And as long as I keep up with my frequent mowing, that zoysia continues to knit tighter and tighter and tighter, and it is literally choking that torpedo grass. It is also choking out the Bermuda grass. I don't see Bermuda grass. There's some there. I know it is, but it's able to mask it. It's able to keep it at bay. The other one was spurge. Some spurge would come in, and I would see it would be choked out. So I'm just these grass types that can grow with both. They are the ones that are the alpha, and they are the 2 that are, in my opinion, the 2 strongest grass types that we have when it comes to thickening up the quickest and remaining thick, and also recovering from injury, because a lot of times when you spray weeds down here, some of the products that we have to use and the heat that we have to spray them in, they're going to damage your zoysia, your St. Augustine, your Bermuda. But I can tell you that Bermuda comes back, and it comes back quicker. My same friend Chris that I mentioned earlier, when we were talking, he actually has some Bermuda in his backyard, some Tiff Tuff that we were able to get him from Bethel Farms, and it got literally decimated by armyworm back when Ben from Lawn Tips was here. Ben went out there with me and helped diagnose it, and we could see it. It was, the worms were everywhere. They were all over his pool deck and everything, and it was crispy brown, and he killed them off, and now today his lawn is back dark green. That Bermuda just rages back. It just, the more you hurt it, the more angry it gets and the stronger it becomes, and it just rages back. So the zoysia does the same thing, even though it's a little bit of a slower grower. It's a little bit of a slower starter. Zoysia will do the same thing once you get it established and get it moving, and you tend to it. So that's something to think about when it comes to that, and how our grass types grow and how they spread and how our seasons affect that. So down here with Michelle, she's got St. Augustine grass. Take advantage of those super strong stolons and continue pushing it. Now, what I wanted to go back to, and this is going to end the podcast here, is I wanted to talk about grass seed, because a lot of people will come down, once again, folks from Illinois, and Michelle didn't ask this, but it's something I get questioned on a lot, is, Alan, where do I get grass seed down here? Or, hey, when should I seed my southern lawn? So I do not recommend that you seed with warm season turf if you're doing large areas. Now, you're going to see me do a small 1,000 square foot area here this season. I have a project set up that's going to start when it gets a little bit warmer, and I'm going to do that with Bermuda grass. But that's a 1,000 square foot section that I'm doing because I want the challenge, because it's going to be fun and it's a small area. But if you're doing an entire lawn, I'm talking front, back, sides, even if it's like a 5,000, she's on 3,800 here, but it's a full front, back, sides, a place, where you're going to have different areas of sun and shade to deal with, different watering zones. I would not recommend that. I would recommend first sod, second plugs, if you're doing a large area. But in the case of Michelle here, she has existing St. Augustine grass. It's been put in just 2 years ago, so even though I'm sure it doesn't look good, it can't all be gone. There has to be some there. So once you do wipe out the majority of the weeds that you have, figure out what you're going to do with that wild Bermuda, whether you just glyphosate it out of there and let the strong survive or whatever. What you can do, there is no St. Augustine grass seed available, doesn't exist, is we use plugs. Take some grass plugs. Grass plugs are mother plants. You are literally planting mother plants into your thin spots, and those mother plants will send out daughter plants or stolons that will continue to spread. So while your existing St. Augustine is doing its thing, add some fresh mother plants. Those are grass plugs. You can get grass plugs at every single Home Depot and Lowe's in Florida this time of year for sure, and definitely during the growing season. You can also get them on my website, thelawcarenut.com, if you're somewhere that doesn't have grass plugs available. By the way, you can also get, on my website, you can get Bermuda grass plugs. We have Bimini Bermuda, which is a beautiful kind of sports turfy looking Bermuda. You can also get some different varieties of St. Augustine grass, as well as you can get zoysia on my website. But long and the short of it is, you can get grass plugs to make things happen quicker. Now, why don't I recommend seeding down here in Florida? Again, we're not talking about St. Augustine grass. We're going to talk about, there is centipede seed available, there's zoysia seed available, and there's definitely Bermuda seed available, and there's definitely Bahia seed available. So the two most common that you're going to find, now I don't know if you'll find Bahia anywhere but in Florida, but every store sells Bahia grass seed here because it's a good coastal grass seed, does great in sand, it has a deep root system. Bahia's got a lot of good qualities to it for sure, and it works well in Florida. And then Bermuda, that's the other one that most people are going to seed with. You're not going to find centipede and zoysia on most shelves, but you'll be able to get it online. But why don't I recommend seeding anyway? Now, Bahia, I do. You can sod with Bahia. I don't think anyone sells Bahia plugs, but with Bahia, I recommend you just throw seed out all the time and just let it go. I'm not going to make this too much on the Bahia right now, but for sure you can overseed with that all the time. But I'm talking about if somebody has a lawn that they're starting from scratch, you're going to burn it down to zero, and you want to reseed, you're going to use centipede, you're going to use zoysia, or you're going to use Bermuda. Why don't I recommend it on a full lawn like that? Because of the same reasons I just stated with the growth habits. You have an advantage in your warm season turf in that the mother plants, in the case of zoysia and Bermuda, can push off rhizomes and stolons. If you start from seed, you have to first grow a mother plant, and then the mother plant will then begin to thicken up from there. That's a long growing cycle. That's why we say that warm season turf is slow to establish from seed, because of that exact growth mechanism that I just talked about. It's got to establish a mother plant first and feel comfortable that she's strong enough to subsist, and then start establishing the stolons and the rhizome base to establish the daughter plants. That takes a long time, and I can tell you that the weeds that we deal with here are designed to outcompete that. They will run and run and run, and the weeds will run faster and stronger and longer than your grass seed will. They just will. And you will have to use multitudes more of chemical products to keep those weeds down, to keep that seed growing. It will be a nightmare, I promise you. You can handle it on a small section for sure. If you want to have a little fun, you can do that, but it's not recommended, like I said, for a full lawn where you got front, back, sides, and different areas that you have to deal with and different conditions and things like that. That's why I don't recommend seeding. However, I do recommend plugging. If you want to try plugging, you're still going to have the same challenges. However, you're implanting those mother plants. So think about it up north when you overseed. You're overseeding single plants. That's fine. Here, we don't overseed. We plug. We plug single plants, and they're just larger. They're just big old cupcakes. That's what we do. So plugs are our grass seed in the south. And the other thing that you have an advantage of when you plant a mother plant is you can apply pre-emergent right away. Now, I don't recommend, and I learned this the hard way, when you plug, prodiamine is probably not the best, and neither would dithiopyr. However, the Pennant Magnum would do just fine during that time. Pennant Magnum can go down right along with grass plugs, and it will act as an excellent pre-emergent against doveweed, big one. It'll act as a it'll suppress Kalinga, crabgrass. There's some other stuff I can't think off the top of my head, but that's a good one you can use. So I'm rambling on and on and on now, but I hope that's been enough tips for you, Michelle, to get out there, you and Bob, and get out there and start working on that lawn and to start getting on top of it and not feel like it's beating you, but feel like that you're starting to beat not only the lawn, but beat the conditions and really start to take control of your crop there, of your stand over there in Claremont. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast here. I hope that was been fun for you. I hope that you've gotten something out of this. As always, I hope it's improved your strategy or the way that you think or the way that you look at lawns. As always, I'm Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut. Thanks a lot for listening. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the lawn.